For those of you who are joining me on the replay, please do comment and say hello. If you're joining me live, of course, also go ahead and say hello on that so I can get your feedback and thoughts on this. Today for this, can we even call it Workflow Wednesday anymore? I'm not sure. I guess we can because we're back to a normal flow of Workflow Wednesday activity here. But I'm going to be actually workflow mapping a lead nurturing / follow-up sequence. Now, this is part of a new content series I'm trying out. I'm just trying to figure out the right way to do it, where I'm going to be going through kind of a story in a month. And again, we'll see how it goes. I want your feedback to let me know if you find this valuable. But this month is going to be focused on lead nurturing or follow-up. And last time I talked about kind of what roughly the definition of this process is. This week, or maybe that's 2 weeks ago. This week, I'm going to be workflow mapping a status quo lead nurture or follow-up process. And then following week, I'm going to actually start building some things out for the members of ClickUp. And we're going to release that template into ClickUp to expand the template category. And then afterwards, I'm going to have kind of a recap, if you will, on YouTube, kind of telling the tale of what we've done, going from a status quo workflow kind of process for lead nurturing to the new one that we're going to build together through this month. So if you're joining this video, oh my gosh, if you're joining me live here, please do chime in and say hello and let me know if you have a lead nurturing or follow-up process. Actually, two things. Tell me what words you use, because I feel like I keep adding more and more synonyms here. And the second thing is tell me if you have a process. What does it look like? What do you use to make it happen? I'm going to be going through what I would consider the most typical follow-up process that I've seen in my clients, which are mostly service-based businesses, usually high-ticket services or high-ticket content businesses. And I want to hear what you have, because it's going to be a little different if you're a product business versus if you are more in the service space. Just the volume is going to change a lot about how your follow-up process looks. But if you are here and joining me, I would love to hear you say hello in the comments. That'll also help me know for sure that all of the audio and stuff is working. Not that I would have any doubts, but I have some doubts. So anyway, let's just dive into this live in the hopes that everything is working properly. You'll notice I am not doing my typical drawing today. I'm trying out something a little bit different. We're here in Mural, and I'm actually going to dive in by just zooming my screen out here and talk about the types of follow-up or lead nurture, because I think as I was prepping for this session, I really realized there's a lot of variety here. And I'm going to zoom in because I know this is small. But when we're talking about nurturing leads or lead nurturing, let's just call it that. Really what we're talking about is trying to warm people up to want to work with us, not in a manipulative way, but more in an awareness way, in an educational way, in a know, like, and trust kind of way, to help people understand what exactly we can do and what problem we can solve. And if that lines up with their problem, wonderful, let's work together. And as I was going through this, I realized there are quite a few varieties of lead nurture out there. And I wasn't very clear on this during our last chat. So I think there's kind of like this initial interest. How do you engage them after their initial interest? Post-consult, we get on a call, perhaps we have that initial conversation. What do you do after that? Post-proposal, meaning you've sent them a proposal, it's disappeared into the darkness, but I want to follow up and stay in touch and make sure that they are aware what value I can add after that point. Then there's post-project, where we finish the project, we have these past clients who are hopefully very happy with us, but they really have no reason to stay in touch. So we're kind of trying to continue to provide value to hopefully lead to maybe more work with that person, just make sure that they're still seeing the results that we want them to see, or to have them, equip them with what they need in order to help our business find more clients by referring a friend. Oh, Amy, I'm so glad to hear that. Just to highlight this comment, thank you so much, Amy, who said she's binging all of our ClickUp videos here. After the initial consult, we call it follow-up. The process is all in my head. No, Amy, I'm so sorry to hear that. I will also say that that's probably the most common follow-up process I've heard of, which is the all in my head when I remember follow-up process. As we're going through today, you'll probably find some similarities, but maybe follow along with this video and start mapping your steps, because I think what you'll find is that it's not as hard to get it out of your head as you might think. And that's kind of what the series is all about. Post-project, I already talked about. The other kind of follow-up sequence is kind of the general holiday / stay in touch. So all of these different types, and I hope this is big enough to see on your screen. If you're watching live, feel free to give me a comment if this is too small, and I'll kind of change my organization. But all of these things here are all types of lead nurture or follow-up. They're all kind of speaking to that, let's further the relationship. And if I was working on this, which, hey, look at this, I am working on this right now. If I were working on this process, I would probably be treating this as 5 separate processes. I know 5 separate processes that you're really mapping out, but we can always start with one. And since post proposal is probably a situation we don't even want to be in, I'm going to take that one to the side. Since post consult, that's a pretty good one. Post interest, post project. Let's see which one I want to start with. Any votes here? Which one we should start with? And just maybe let's say post interest is a little bit hard. Post consult. I think I'm going to go with post consult because at that point I've invested some energy into these folks and I want to make sure that they are aware of kind of what I can do, not slip off of their mind, especially once you've invested that much time in a call. I think I'm going to take a post consult folks as the process we're going to map out. So here we are on Mural again. Oh man, Amy, I'm so glad to hear that you have been growing quicker than you could document. That is exactly the problem that we are looking to solve. I think what's sometimes hard, and this is just, here we go, one of Layla's infamous asides on these lives, process documentation sometimes costs growth, which I shouldn't be advertising, right? Saying that doing the stuff that I talk about is going to keep you from growing, but sometimes it will. It's kind of that slowing down to speed up kind of thing. And when you're in a growth stage, or even if you're pre-growth, right, you're just struggling, you're just getting started, you're a fledgling business, it might not make sense to work in process stuff. Some of the stuff I'm talking about, maybe you need a rough outline, but you don't need to go much further than what I'm going to go through today. Oh, this way for you. Today, in order to grow your business. You can be a multi-million-dollar businesses. I've seen many multi-figure businesses who do not have any processes documented, and that's okay. But if we do document them, when we're reaching that success, we've got an easier way to kind of wind everything up because all of the processes are there with us versus getting to that $1 million mark and realizing we've never written down anything and we lose 2 people, we lose all of the knowledge that they have, and we're basically reinventing our business. So anyway, side note, I'm going to go back into here and we're just going to start process mapping. And if you're watching today, you can feel free to actually follow along and do this at the same time. I'm using Mural, which is a workflow mapping. It's kind of an infinite canvas kind of tool. It's kind of like what ClickUp mind maps should be. But if you have a piece of paper, that is a perfectly great place to start. So I always like to start my process mapping by creating one box equals one step in the process. And since we're starting with like a post-consult scenario, I'm actually going to make the first step a consult happens. And we're going to go from there. When I am writing a process map, I'm typically focused on documenting reality. So for those of you who are joining us here, if you have a reality, I would love for you to write it in the comments. You can probably write it as simply as something like, email, phone call, 1 day later, something like that could be simple enough to start outlining what your process is. I would love to hear your take as I start writing this out. But first, I'm going to write what I would consider the most status quo, most typical process I hear from folks when they're trying to do a follow-up process. Typically, it's something like this. The consult occurs, and then I'm going to give the task, the step a title. So email right after. Very good name. The technology is usually an email, usually not templated. And the time it takes them is usually about 20 minutes because they don't have it templated. Email right after. Typically, this is all happening about, 3 to 10 days after. Thank you, Grammarly. 3 to 10 days after the actual consult. And basically, someone sends an email saying, hey, it was great to speak with you. Let's talk again soon. There's no real ask in that message. There's no real plan in that message. And usually that message isn't tracked anywhere. So we go straight from a consult into an email saying, hey, it was great chatting with you. Let's chat again soon. Maybe there's some follow-up resources in there, maybe not, but this is just a manually written email. You just kind of shoot off the hip after a consultation happens. After that, maybe, again, status quo here, maybe there's another point of contact. And usually this is once again, email. I'm going to just call this the oh shit email. Maybe I shouldn't write that in case there are kids watching here. Oh crap email. The oh crap email. Meaning you totally forgot you talked to this person. It is now 3 months later. And you're like, wonder if they're still alive. I probably should have followed up some more. And again, this is a manual email. It takes you about 20 minutes again because it's not templated. Maybe you look in your sent emails to find an old copy, but probably not. And this my friends, is typically what I'm seeing when folks have a status quo follow-up process. If you're in a higher volume business, I'm thinking realtors, insurance professionals, someone that's dealing with a higher volume. Most often, if you have this kind of process, the spacing between the 2 points of that initial email to that later follow-up email is usually spread out further. Maybe the second one doesn't even occur because you have so many people that your memory is not prompting you. If you have a smaller volume business, I'm thinking a OBM, a consultant, someone that does intensives where you don't have a lot of clients that you're handling in 1 month. Maybe this is happening purely by memory and you're able to keep on top of it all. But most likely not. Most likely clients are slipping through the cracks, and usually there's no data being tracked here. So, and I know normally when we're doing these process maps, it gets a little bit more sophisticated on the status quo, but in this case, I don't really think it is. So I'm going to take the status quo now, and I'm going to start experimenting. So we have a status quo, and I'm going to start improving it. I'm going to drag this down here. Now, if you're joining me, Amy, I know you're here, but if anyone else is joining me, and those of you who are watching this, I can see in the comments there, if you'd like to chime in, how do you think we could improve this? And let's just pretend this is your business or pretend this is your friend's business. What are the ways we could take the status quo process and make it a future state process that is actually a process versus what this is, which is really more of a, locking things down, which is really more of a kind of winging it scenario. How could we improve this process? I think the easiest thing for this is most likely just prompting. So one of the lessons in ClickUp, and that's my ClickUp learning community where it has kind of an online course plus Q&A plus a community, which those of you who are members of that, thank you so much. It's been so fun getting that off the ground. But one of the lessons in there is really talking about how in ClickUp, we have some choices around automation. We could be automating actions, activities, or automating instructions. And not to give away the whole lesson, but the main difference is if we were looking at this follow-up process and we were trying to, let's say we were trying to make it better by having it happen in the sense of the biggest thing we're trying to solve for is it just not happening. We might think about, I should automate this follow-up. We start shopping for reply IO. We start trying to find different ways to automate the follow-up of our prospects. However, there aren't many high-ticket service providers or really hands-on high-touch services that are going to want to automate this type of lead, where you're at the consult stage, where they know you, where you've talked with them. Automation at this point can be really insensitive and sometimes kind of thoughtless. But almost any business can benefit from automating instructions. In other words, prompting the humans involved to take either a template or to take a technology that is somewhat automated and prompting you to, hey, send that follow-up. Here's what you talked about last session. Here's what we generally say in our first follow-up. Combine that to send a follow-up message to this person. And that's typically what I'd see recommending around a nurturing process when we're trying to improve it. We're not looking to automate it typically, unless you're very high volume, more transactional based. Typically, we're talking about automating instructions. So let's look at what instructions we might automate, and that's what this process is going to tell us. Future state, let's just start thinking about it. In an ideal world, would we wait 3 to 10 days to follow up right after a consult? I think most likely we're going to want to tell a better story than this. So I'm thinking probably 1 hour after, immediately, basically after, it could be nice to send an email that is a modified template that takes us 10 minutes or less. And we want to give that email kind of a story. For right now, I'll just call this nice to chat email. When we're writing this process map, I'm going to just give ourselves headers here. And when we're done process mapping here, this becomes our to-do list, which I've talked about in various workflow mapping videos. This becomes our to-do list for what we need to create. So in this case, nice to chat is an email template that I'm going to want to create to prompt me. We'll talk more about that as we go through here. What else? Those of you who are joining me, what else could we add to this process to make it more meaningful? I think the oh crap email or the oh shit email can probably go. But I'm wondering what else could be added in its stead. Think about this. We've just had we're on a consult call. What do we want to happen after? Well, for me, I'm thinking about, how did that consult call go? I released a video just recently talking about conditional processes where, if this, then, how exactly we handle those in ClickUp. Now, at this point, we're just workflow mapping. So the only thing we need to do is add a little decision tree and go from there. Once we're in ClickUp, it's a little bit more of a sophisticated process. So for those of you joining me for the live build out in Clicking Up next, I think it's next week, you'll see kind of how that comes to life. We're just, okay, this is not process mapping approved, but we're just going to go with it. Let's just pretend that those are connected because this is getting real weird with me. Okay, who knows what's going on there? Is this one going to let me do it? There we go. Okay. Not the best display mural here. So we have a bit of a condition going on at this point. And this decision is, was it a good consult? Fit. Right? I think either way, I probably want to send a follow-up email, but should it look different based on how the consult call went? I think so. And actually, maybe I'll even put this fit question earlier on in the process. So I'll have this back here. And if it's a fit, I'm going to go to one type of email sequence. And if we're not a fit, I think it's another email that I want to have going out. So here I am turning this kind of like the reactive consult process, and I'm thinking about it. And from that just intentional reflection, I'm finding ways to make it a little bit more logical. So in this case, it'll be a nice to chat, and maybe it'll be a refer or not fit, not a good fit response. Thanks. Not a good fit response. Again, this will be a template that I'll draft. And because I don't really like sending impersonal emails, my email template, when I get to that stage, is probably going to look something more like, hey, nothing else there. Hey, the template, again, this is what I'm looking at. It was so great to meet with you. Those of you who have had consults with me, you probably noticed I have something that says something like, here's a recap of our call, : That is most of my template right there. What I just read off, hey, blank, here's a recap of our call, : And I have some bullet points started, but while there's maybe one bullet point that's pretty much the same for everybody, after that, I'm taking the time, and this is where the 10 minutes comes in and Grammarly comes in, where I start writing some notes based on our conversation to help recap the call. But I have maybe those 3 bullet points in my template to prompt me. So I'm not staring at the blank page of an email and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to say to recap? Because that kind of decision fatigue, can I call it that? That kind of overwhelm will keep me from doing it. I'll put it off and it'll be the next day and I'll be like, oh shoot, I never sent that recap, which surely I've done, but less so when there's actually a process. For those of you who are here in the comments, whether you're watching live or the replay, do you have this kind of fork in the road? Do you have templates that you're using for your follow-up? If so, what do you include in them? Any tips for me as we get to that stage? Because that'll be coming here soon. I'd love to hear what do you include? Just a few bullet points even. What do you include in the kind of the email you send after your consult? And when do you send it? Is an hour after too soon? Is it too late? Do you send it during the email? Do you draft it during the call? I'd love to hear your insights on this guy as we dive in. Now, there's a little bit of delay, but I'll check the comments as they come in. All right, so consult, fit. We've got 2 different emails coming out after that. Okay, so we got our nice to chat. And let's just think about what could happen next here. So if they're a good fit, what do we want to do? If they're a good fit, and I have a very high ticket service, like I'm thinking something that's in the, very high ticket. Okay, low high ticket. Let's just say I'm in the thousands for my service. Maybe I want to do a little bit more of a involved process here. And let's hypothetically think, let's say I'm a virtual assistant. I like using that example because I think there's a lot of virtual assistants in this group. And so when I get a client, I'm getting a client that's not only a one-time client, but it's an ongoing retainer. So the value, the lifetime value of a client for me is pretty darn high. So I have an incentive to really go all out on the follow-up if someone's a good fit, because if I convert them, I'm going to be making a lot of revenue from that individual person. If I was selling a community, a low-ticket community like ClickUp, or if I was selling a digital product, I might go a little bit toned down on this follow-up because it's basically the more we follow up, the higher our cost of acquisition is. So here we are. Let's just say I'm a virtual assistant. So I really want to go all out. I might then add a step where I go follow them on social. I think this is a pretty unintuitive step that I've seen a lot of people do with success, where they will, after the call, and we'll say this is immediately, within the hour after the call, if the client's a good fit, they're going to go follow them on all of the social media, preferably the platform that you are most active on. So for me, that would be probably YouTube. Maybe for you, it's LinkedIn. Maybe it's, whatever it might be, connect after that call to have another way of engagement. And this is just on social media in terms of the tool. And the time it takes is probably, let's say 15 minutes, because you might do some light stalking while you're there. Now, to have this happen, this is kind of where the process maps all start fitting in. We need to make sure before the consult, we get their social media. And this is probably in your intake form, and this is kind of how one process informs the other. We want to make sure we have those social media handles as an input to this whole process. So I'm just going to shove this back here and give it kind of a color so we just remember that's something that we need to add in if we don't already have it. Most of you probably already have that in your intake form. All right, follow them on social. Time takes 15 minutes. Good to go. What else could we do here in our follow-up process? I don't think this is enough yet because right now we're still on the day of. Let's keep following this kind of happy path here. And maybe, let's say 3 days after. Something that could be interesting as let's again think of virtual assistant. Let me just get even narrower and say that I'm a content virtual assistant. Wouldn't that just be a nice story? Maybe I'm going to take, let's just say 20 minutes. Still seems probably generous. Oh my gosh, don't show this again. Goodbye, Grammarly. Love you, but not right now. Let's just say a few days later, I'm going to set some time in my calendar for some intentional networking through social media. And in this case, I'm going to just go to the social media accounts that I just followed and go purposefully engage, ask questions, make myself visible for this person I'm trying to get as in this case, social media content manager or content based social media business. So I'm going to go targeted engagement. So this would be how many days after? What do we want to say? Let's say, maybe I'll even do a pause. Just do a little pause box so that way I can keep this straight in my head. Let's say wait 3 days. Oh my gosh, I told you no. No means no, Grammarly. I'm just going to throw some color in here to help it break out. I'm going to wait 3 days or so. And I'm going to have some targeted social media engagement. And I could have this as a block for all of my prospects where I just go through the list and engage with each one of them. Or I could just have a time set aside for this person. Maybe this is a recurring task where I have a calendar slot on my time blocked calendar to say, go engage with prospects on social media because I'm a social media content virtual assistant in this case. After some targeted social media engagement where I'm basically just checking in, commenting, making myself visible, maybe I want that to repeat each for a period of time. And you've heard me probably talk about before how I believe that we should write out each step of a process. So I'm probably going to expand this a little bit. Unlock. And let's just keep rolling with this. Make this a little bit smaller. And we'll probably do a little bit more of that. But between that, I think I want to mix in some different medias. So wait 3 days. We could even just say we're going to add them into our weekly rotation, but I'll spell out each step here. Now I'm making myself I'm pursuing in a very focused way to make sure that they know that I am top of mind, that I do social media stuff, that apparently Mural doesn't want to add their lines in and all of that good stuff. So between these, I think we're going to go back to more of a traditional follow-up approach. I'm going to add in an email. So this email here, and we're just going to keep squeezing. If this doesn't demonstrate how lightweight this process can be, I don't know what will. If you're on your piece of paper, this might be a moment to just draw kind of an aside in your sticky notes. So for example, if you're drawing on a piece of paper, you have your choose boxes, just draw kind of a loop, a detour, if you will, to add things in. If you are using sticky notes, well, you are set, my friend. You can just spread out those sticky notes and add more pieces in. Back in here, what do you guys think we should add next? I'm curious. I think that we need another email. I think that would be a good way to add some different media forms in here. Let's say we're going to make this an email and we're going to call it I'm not sure. Let's say it's an email of, just a follow up. Thinking of you. What could be a good topic? You leave it as a blank for now, but it'll be some kind of email re-engaging, reminding them what we do, checking in, something that makes sense for the type of conversation we just had. And this will be an email. Once again, it'll be a template-based email, and it'll take me maybe a little bit longer, actually. Maybe I'll leave that as 20 minutes so I have that time to really think about what's going to be a meaningful response for that person. And let's just add some more weighting in here. Having this wait time as its own block isn't something that I'll always do. Typically, I will just draw in parentheses kind of what the delay pattern is. But if you're using a system like, let's just say Dubsado, it actually thinks in terms of this kind of wait. What is going on with you, dude? It actually thinks in terms of this kind of waiting block. So sometimes this can be nice to just write your process in the form that you're going to want to use when you're creating the translation into the system. So for here, I'll just keep it this way. All right. So we've got this process kind of started here. Is this a final draft? Probably not. Is this better than the old process, which, to review, for those of you who are just joining us, our status quo process for following up was emailing right after, which was really just whenever we remembered, manually, and then sending an, oh crap, I totally forgot you were alive email sometime in the next few months. And that's it. Now we've got to this future state of we take an intake form where we have either their email address or get their social media. Then we have a consult. And after the consult, what we have happen is based on whether or not they're a fit, we have a different sequence started. All right, let me see what I have here. Amy has a tip. In those later follow-ups, I like to share an industry link that's relevant to this. Like, I saw this and thought of you instead of call me back. Dang you. Yes, that is so good. So I was kind of alluding to that when I was saying kind of the thinking of you thing. I've definitely seen people who have more education-based campaigns where based on how they sell their services, it's mainly trying to explain the value add or explain something. And so they'll have more of an educational email. So I'll go ahead and do a thinking of you kind of email here, where we would have a template or an article or a something that kind of helps add more value into the relationship there. When you remember they exist. I think that's a good part too of the story there. Thanks, Amy. So I love that. Thinking of you email as our step here. This could look different depending on what, for those of you who are actual marketers and not just amateurs like myself, you probably are be able to relate this to your buyer's journey and what are the questions people are asking after a consult. Put yourself in your person's shoes. If you're a house cleaner, it's going to be a different type of email than if you're a knowledge worker, than if you were a home renovator. It's just going to be a different type of thing that's going to entice someone or give them the urgency or purpose that they need in order to take some action. So if you guys are watching this, if this is valuable to you, if you're enjoying, let me just do that. If you guys are enjoying this kind of format, please do give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment and let me know. This is, again, something new I'm experimenting with. So I'd love to have your feedback to help me know if this is helpful. And also, if you have any thoughts on this follow-up process, leave that in the comments as well. All right. So thinking of you email template, we've got that going. Wait 3 days, targeted social media. We might just change our time spacing out here. Imagine all this translating into a beautiful template that's going to prompt us each time it happens. Maybe we want to make the timing a little bit varied so we're not going crazy here. And we've got a pretty good process here. Now, just looking at this top line, and maybe it's too small for some to see in the current perspective of this, I feel like we can do better on a front that's not related to the actual substance here. My thought is, what about tracking? Yeah, that would be really great, right? Having a way to track where we are in the process. And while that might just come in having this actual process documented, I'm thinking based on that consult, we want to make sure at some point in this process, we are doing a little tally mark in wherever we're tracking our KPIs on follow-up. And yes, this is also an aside that if you don't have a metric for following up, well, maybe you should. So I might have a step in here. And this is just kind of how it flows. I'm actually going to probably add it before here because I know for my instance right here in this example that I'm going to be giving, we're going to be creating a ClickUp template inside ClickUp for this actual scenario. Because I know that, oh, look, that one actually moved properly. Because I know that, I think I'm going to have a step in here called create ClickUp template, process template. And that process, the actual task that will then be created that I'm going to use to track this process, this might be enough of a KPI because I'll be able to run a report. But maybe I also want to add it to spreadsheet through maybe a Zap automatically or manually add it to whatever kind of tracking sheet I have, because that not a good fit decision might be something that I want to manually record. And maybe my automation that I'll set up will not do that. So I'm just going to add this extra step in here. I'm using colors kind of arbitrarily today, but this will help me later on when I have to start sorting through this. So we have consult, creating our ClickUp process template, which is giving us a metric to measure. Fit, we've got these kind of sequences going on. Is there a point where we want another fork in the road? Maybe, right? At any point in this process, if there is a clear, hand waving of, yes, I really want to work with you, we probably want to pull them out of this process and move them on to whatever our kind of onboarding or sales process is. So I don't know that I need to note that there, but I just want you guys to think about this, that this process is by default, right? This is our default journey. And if someone raises their hands or asks a question or kind of in some way disrupts the natural flow, we'll pull them out and have a more personal experience or shift them into a different process that makes more sense for where they are. But for now, this is kind of our status quo. I think if I was kind of continuing to build out this process, I might cheat a little bit, just breaking the rules I'm talking about here. And I might just have this kind of fork and just say every week I have that targeted social media engagement going on after the initial time, which I know is cheating, but we're just going to keep doing it. And I might add some more emails. So again, if the lifetime value of my client is very high, oh my gosh, that is going to drive me nuts. If the lifetime value of my client is very high, I probably want to be following up for an extended period of time. So following up for, what do we have up to? Let's just do the math here. Immediately, 3 days later. So we're about a week later. That's probably not enough follow-up if I have a very high client lifetime value. So maybe I want to wait 9 days. I'm just putting in some numbers so it feels a little bit more organic, not to lie, but once again, not to feel like I'm constantly pestering that person. And depending on what their decision, kind of what their window of decision making is, I want to be following up through that entire period. If I'm a photographer who is planning, who provides wedding services, right? My follow-up sequence is probably going to be pretty long, at least until, a certain period of that their wedding is coming close, because there's still a chance at that time that they're going to need to find another photographer, something like that. If I am providing virtual assistant services, similarly, I'm probably going to have a pretty long follow-up sequence because it's a long game for me. They might need to add an additional VA at some point down the line. If I am doing something a little bit more spurtsy, like catering, well, no, catering is pretty routine as well. Maybe I'm a tailor for a wedding dress. If I don't get that job right away, I'm probably not going to do as long-term of a follow-up. It's probably going to be condensed and very fast and furious because I know I have a small window in which they're going to make that decision as who's going to be tailoring their wedding dress. I don't know why I'm in wedding mind right now. Sorry for that industry right now. I guess you're just on my mind. But anyway, so we're going to build out a follow-up sequence. There's no rhyme or reason to how we're going to build this out. I think it's going to be experimentation and understanding who your people are. But we're just going to come up with a few other prompts of emails, checking in email. I mean, just a few other ones that we could put in here to just give ourselves some guidance. There's obviously, this is more art than science to figure out what your sequence is and what channel it is. If you are dealing with a very young population, you're maybe sending them a message on TikTok rather than sending all these emails. If you're dealing with a more aesthetic population, maybe you're sending them a DM or a voice message on Instagram. And in fact, let's just go ahead and let's change this one to be a voice DM. Because again, we're thinking that this person, imaginary person, is a social media content VA. So maybe you're sending a voice DM on Instagram. And maybe you don't have a template, but maybe you do have a prompt for yourself to know what to say. And it takes you 5 minutes. You just send a DM, be like, hey, I saw this post. I had this idea of how to make this post better. Have you ever considered blah, 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 blah? It reminds me of what we talked about on our call and so on and so forth. So we could just continue on this journey. Maybe I want to make this wait even longer. All of a sudden, this process is probably about a 40-day process or so. Maybe almost about there, right? We're getting close in how long the process is, and we've started to build it out a little bit further. Understanding how much follow-up, what sequence, what channel is all going to come down to understanding your person. This is it's sales, right? So we think it's going to be impersonal, but this is a very empathetic process of figuring out what should this flow look like. You might find that you start trying a process and you're not getting engagement, you're not getting responses back. Well, maybe that's a sign that you're overdoing it with your people, depending on how your people prefer to be communicated with. Maybe you're having people reach out to you before you even send the message, which might mean you're under communicating based on that person. Now, you might have an ideal customer, but everyone's a little different, right? So don't be offended if one person's like, okay, stop emailing me, and the other person is emailing you because you're taking too long. This is more art than science. And I like to say when we're talking about process, the goal is effectiveness. That is efficiency plus personality. Efficiency plus empathy equals effectiveness. Because we're not trying to be a well-oiled machine when we're dealing with humans, but we're also not trying to be purely based on emotions and instincts, because then we won't get anything. Well, we won't get as much done and we won't be as intentional about it. So, water or coffee break, which I'm out of coffee. So water break. What do you guys think about this? Does anyone, I'm going to keep going here on the other side of the process, but any takeaways on this process here? Any thoughts as I take a sip of water here? Is this similar to any processes that you have? Is there anything different that you would suggest for this content virtual assistant who I'm making this process for? Love to hear your thoughts. So I'm just going to keep going through here because now we created this kind of beautiful process, first draft, we'll call it, for the good fit client. And, maybe we even have, I've had some clients where we'll have a good fit client, we'll have like a dream client sequence, which is different. And maybe it's a lot more, personal. Now we go the not a good fit way, right? Maybe this process is a lot shorter. We send an email saying, hey, we're not a good fit. Really appreciate you reaching out. But maybe we also do follow up with them. And maybe it's not on social, but maybe it's more of an email checking in, especially if we gave referrals. So here, if I have a referral that I've given, I do like to personally follow up about a month later and see, hey, how was that referral? Because even though you're not my client, I want to make sure that you found someone that was able to help you. And I want to make sure the referrals that I'm giving are good ones. I'm very conservative when it comes to what referrals I give. I really want to make sure that people are, being delivered the service that they're purchasing and then some. And so I might wait 30 days and I might just do a referral checking in email. That anymore. And this will be, oh my gosh, Grammarly. And it'll be on email. And it'll take me maybe about probably 5 minutes or so just to send a reply. I swear, I keep clicking that and it keeps coming back. Stop. Oh my gosh. But this would just be a kind of checking in, making sure how things are going and making sure the referral that I gave them was a good fit, which could maybe lead to a step. And we're getting kind of imaginary here into hypotheticals, but that's how we do when we're doing a hypothetical process map. Maybe the next step is not a check-in at all, but maybe this last step is to update my referral spreadsheet. And this is going to be a ClickUp task. And it'll take me about 5 minutes to update that with that information. So if I have a spreadsheet of the people I typically refer to, and I reach out to someone who I referred to that person, and they get back to me and they say, oh my gosh, that person, man, they were terrible. They just didn't, they didn't answer my phone calls, whatever. I would want to update that on my end and make sure that if I refer that person again, I have that caveat, or I reach out to that person and say, hey, what the heck's going on? Because, it's always a grain of salt with human beings involved. But here we go. We've started to get a more sophisticated process built out here where we've got inputs that we need. We've added a tracking moment here. Maybe we want to add another tracking moment somewhere further on the line to kind of give ourselves kind of a wrap up to this experience. So for example, here, after 30 days, we no longer care about this client. We're like, all right, if I'm chasing you for 30 days and based on my business, you are not interested or you're not reacting, you'll come find me when you need me. Maybe we want to update our tracker with saying that we're kind of giving up. We're going to give it a, dead status or a not interested status. We can start adding in those layers of status tracking throughout this process. So maybe at this point, if they're still not engaging or haven't responded, we change the status of, let's just imagine a task in ClickUp from a hot lead to a lukewarm lead. Something like that. This is what you would need if you wanted to make a process with instructions in ClickUp. It's also what you need if you tried to automate a process using something like Dubsado or Honeybook or 17 Hats. So here we go. We've got this going on, and we have this one below here where we have thanks, not a good fit, wait 30 days, referral, check an email, update referral checklist. We could add a lot more tasks in here, I think, but this is probably where we're going to leave this for this process. You can see now this might be a little zoomed out here, but just doing the before and after, just by simply process mapping, we've made some big jumps. We've gone from really not having any inputs that we needed to making sure, I want to make sure I get their social media handles. We've gone from having a memory-based process to having a few key things that we need to create. And let's just do a quick count of what we need to do to go from here into a ClickUp task. And I'll just zoom out to this and just do a quick count on my end. Looking at this process over here for you, we need to create a nice to chat email. Nice to chat email. We'd want to follow them on social media. So that's a task. We'd want to create a recurring task for engagement on social media. We'd want to send a second email. We might want to create an Instagram prompt, which is probably going to be a task for ourselves. Whoop, I'm moving the whole thing, but that's fine. We're going to want to get a check-in email template. I think I'm up to 7 now, unless I miscounted, which is totally possible. We're going to want to create a referral email. So we're up to 8, 9, the thanks and not a good fit email. And emails. I think conservatively, I could probably create 9 quick templated emails in probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get all these things together and into a ClickUp task. So let's just say an hour and a half is how much it would take me. Oh, we'll be conservative, 2 hours. Those of you who will be joining me for the live build out, you'll see exactly how long it takes. But let's just say it'll take me 2 hours to create this process. But once I have it, every lead that comes in, maybe I have a Zap set up, maybe I'm doing it manually. Every lead that comes in, this process is added. And now I have prompts reminding me, hey, it's been 34 days since you talked to Susie. This is what you talked about with Susie. This is what you should message her about next. This is the times you talked to her in the past. And we've basically built this CRM style process, whether we put it in a task manager, whether we put it in a business management platform like Dubsado, whether we put it in a CRM like Streak or HubSpot or whatever else you want to use. We've documented the process that we're going to need, and we've basically developed the stages that we want to work our people through, assuming they take no more drastic action, assuming they don't wave their hand and say, whoa, I really want to work with you. But this is just one of several potential follow-up processes. So in, let's just say 2 hours, I can build one of them, build it out, have it good, have it as a first draft. Future edits will be quick little edits here or there to refine those templates. I have a few more I could also add in, and these could be at different sequences. Like, for example, a holiday sequence could just prompt me to email everybody I've talked to around election day and say, don't forget to vote, or whatever that might be. If they're in the US at least. Maybe it's building a post-project sequence next, which would look a little bit different and would be designed for people I've already worked with. Maybe it would be post-interest, which would be a process that would actually happen before this process to get someone on a consult call. Or maybe if I'm still naive and sending out proposals into the abyss, maybe it's the post-proposal process to follow up on, hey, I sent you that proposal, that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's more I'm missing. And if you're here in the comments, whether you're live or in the replay, please do leave a comment with what other types of follow-up process I might be missing. But otherwise, I think that's about it for this workflow map. We mapped this even with narration, which I know can sometimes lead to a few asides. We mapped this with narration in 42 minutes now. It's up to the 42-minute mark, which is long, right? But if you were doing this by yourself, probably would take you about 30. Let's just say 30 minutes. And I feel clearer than what I was before on how this business handles its follow-up. We've got our guidelines. We've basically created a to-do list for how we're going to create this process. And in the next session, I'm actually going to create this process for the ClickUp members in ClickUp, because that's where I think I am going to put this process for myself to automate the instructions involved. So yeah, any questions that you guys have, please do leave them here, whether it's you're joining here live or you're catching the replay. Either way, so happy to have you here. Please do say hello in the comments and then ask any questions that you have. So if you were in the shoes, oh my gosh, if you were in my shoes right now and you had this, do you feel clear on where you go next? Do you already have this for your business? Have you not ever done this for your business? And if not, why not? I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Is this something that's completely radical new way to think about it? Or is this kind of like, oh yeah, duh, you just haven't had the time to get it on your schedule? I'd love to hear kind of your impressions in the comments of this video, whether you're watching live on Facebook or the replay on YouTube or in Facebook. But my name's Layla. I really appreciate you joining me today. And if you are new to either the Facebook group here or new to YouTube, be sure to follow me on both platforms to get the full story about what we're going to be doing throughout this month, developing this process further. If you're a member of ClickUp, be sure to join me. Again, I think it's next week. I'll check all the details for sure. This is our first pioneering series here. Join me next time for when we're going to actually be turning this process that we have into a ClickUp task template. I'm thinking a task template that you could then combine with the CRM template that we already have hidden inside there. So that way you can start having your, in this case, post-consult process automated. Yeah, automated. Automated via instructions, not automated via just going to sit back and send a bunch of random messages out to people I'm supposed to be really caring about. So anyway, yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you guys in the comments. I'll just keep watching as this some time passes this afternoon, and hope you're all having a wonderful day. And yeah, talk to you soon.